Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Movies You Missed podcast. This is episode 44. I am John.
And I'm Vee.
And I'm Amy!
Whoa, hey!
Welcome!
Amy's here.
Hi, everybody.
This is my wife, everybody, for those that may not know.
Welcome, Amy. Thank you so much for joining us and stepping in this week. We have a very special Valentine's Day episode. John and Amy are taking over Movies You Missed podcast this week. I am sick, in case anyone can't tell, and it just happens to coincide with Valentine's Day, so it works out great for everyone.
It seems to work out great for two of us over here because we're not sick, but Vee, we're very sorry to hear that you are. But we were very excited to watch two movies that we both very much enjoy watching together since we've been together.
And I'm just so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us, Amy.
Thanks for inviting me.
So for those that have been with us before, know Vee and I run the show here, but now that we have Amy with us, we are moving on with the same formula that Vee and I do. We both, my wife and I, chose movies that we both like for Valentine's Day, that we both enjoy. Definitely mine is one that I felt needed to be revisited, and I believe, Amy, you introduced me to yours. Is that correct?
I did.
Look at that. Amy introduced me to some movies, everybody. It does happen. So before we jump into those films, I am excited to have Amy explain to our audience why she's a co-host today.
Well, I have an interesting history with movies in general. I grew up in a very religious family, and before the age of 12, I hadn't watched any real movies except for maybe like some Disney animated movies, and then the religious movies that I was allowed to watch, and that was it. So I didn't really see any movies until I was 12 years old. Except for one, and that was Jurassic Park, and that is because I had to stay awake all night for a brain test the next morning, and my mom thought it was a special treat, and it was the only thing playing, and I was never to tell my father, ever, ever, ever. So it's a good thing he doesn't listen to this podcast. But since I moved in with John when we started dating, I thought it would be fun to start doing some background acting to earn a little bit of extra cash. And I've done some pretty big productions. I was on The Neighborhood, NCIS LA, the failed show The Player with Wesley Snipes. And that was a really long, I think it was like a 16-hour day.
Yeah, that was a really, really long day with a lot of background, and Amy danced her ass off in a club for 16 hours.
I did. Yeah, that was interesting. Yeah, so I've really enjoyed seeing like behind the scenes of how shows and movies are made, and I have gotten a little bit more appreciation for movies. There is a few that I absolutely love, and I'm just happy that I have the ability to watch whatever I want now.
Yes, we are not going to discuss some of your taste in movies, including Batman and Robin, because that would take over the whole episode, and this is about Valentine's Day.
And for those that know, Batman and Robin is Amy's favorite. When we discussed the Batman and Robin, the Batman Forever and Batman Mask of the Phantasm episode, my wife wanted us to watch Batman and Robin instead, but I said no.
Thank God.
It's more like my love for Seal and The Kiss from a Rose.
No, not again. If anyone listened to our episode last week, they know that I hate that song with a fiery passion.
Wow. I don't know what to say. I like it.
And so do I. And Vee knows that. And I started singing it, and Vee cut me off real quick.
Oh my God, this podcast is experiencing a takeover, people. Help me, help me. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for helping us this week and swooping in and saving me specifically. I definitely couldn't talk as long as needed for an episode of our podcast, and so I'm very excited to hear about your picks for our Valentine's Day rom-com episode.
I am very excited to discuss both of them.
It's definitely my favorite genre of movies I watch most often.
That's adorable and perfect for this episode. But before we get into both of your picks, we like to ask if either of you have seen any movies this week.
Actually, Vee, now that you ask, since it's Valentine's Day, I asked only one thing of my wife this year for Valentine's Day. a gift from her to me, and that was to go see a film that was being re-released in theaters after 25 years of being released originally in 1997. This is a film that we have mentioned many times before, written and directed by James Cameron, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, Billy Zane, Gloria Stewart, Frances Fisher. Titanic, everybody. We went and saw Titanic in the theaters again.
Indeed, we did. Actually, it was my first time seeing it all the way through.
Which blew my mind, and Amy, I believe our listeners need to hear the story as to why you have never seen this from beginning to end.
As we know already, my taste in movies is very slim, and I was very sheltered when it came to movies growing up. And I remember when this movie came out on VHS, it was a 2-tape set. Everyone probably remembers that. A 2-tape set because it was so long. And my mom actually bought it for her and my dad to watch. And I remember that they went out of town and left us with our nanny for a few days. So my younger brother and I decided to sneak into my parents' room and get their VHS copy of Titanic. And we were so excited. It was late at night. The nanny was asleep. So we took it down into our basement, put it in our VHS player, and we started watching the movie. And we were so excited. We were doing something we weren't supposed to. And we kept noticing that it kept skipping scenes. And then it would like bleep out in the middle of a sentence. And we're like, what is going on? And then all of a sudden at some point, the local weather came on the screen.
The local weather during Titanic.
And it was so odd. And then I remembered that my parents would send VHS tapes to this website called CleanFlix, and they clean up VHS tapes for like a certain like PG or PG-13, whatever you wanted it to be. And you could block out certain types of things like nudity, sex, bad language, whatever you wanted to block out, and they would cut it out for you. So I assume that my parents probably sent this to CleanFlix. So my viewing of this movie was very, very tainted, and I was very turned off to ever watching it again until this week.
Oh my God. That is wild. I've never heard of that before.
And it's crazy because we've been together for 8 years now, going on 9 soon. I've watched this movie, I don't know how many times since we've been together, and you've really kind of been in and out of the room, and it always really kind of rubbed me the wrong way because you knew how much I love this movie. But I gotta say, I'm very glad that it was the first time from beginning to end for you today, especially in this new 4K 3D transfer. If anybody remembers when James Cameron re-released this film about 12 years ago with his first 3D transfer, it was also very amazing. This, though, this is almost like he had got everybody back together and reshot the entire fucking movie. It was so crystal clear. The soundtrack was absolutely spectacular. The makeup on everybody did not even waver at all. It didn't look like it was up-resed in any way, shape, or form. It literally looked like and felt, because we were in the 4DX theater, like we mentioned before when we went and saw Avatar: The Way of Water. So we got the sense in the water and the seats moving and throwing us around. So during the sinking sequence, absolutely exceptional. It felt like we were going down with the ship.
I will say, though, if you're a person that is seasick, it's not a great movie to see in 4DX. I mean, it's not this way the whole time, but they somehow got like the motion of the ocean perfectly. And I was starting to get a little bit seasick in parts. I'm glad it wasn't like the whole way through, but this was definitely the way to see it all the way through the first time. It really puts you in the movie.
I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. There were moments in the movie when you reacted and exclaimed during, certain points, and I always get excited when you do that because it means you're into the movie. And again, you sat through an almost full 3-hour length movie without getting out of your seat, and I am a very proud husband yet again.
Thank you. It doesn't happen often because I love getting up and walking around during the middle stuff.
Indeed. And again, if anybody has been having any thoughts about going to see it in the theaters, even if you don't have a 4DX theater to see Titanic in, go see it. Go for the fact that you love the movie. Go for the fact that you want to support this movie. Go for the fact that it is still absolutely one of the most fantastic and greatest films ever made. I love Titanic, and I will always love Titanic. And I'm so glad that we got to share this movie together, my love.
It was awesome. I give it a 4 out of 5 stars.
Wow, that's high praise coming from you.
It is. It is. Also, it has Leo DiCaprio in it. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, and a young Leo DiCaprio. That's kind of what I was alluding to, is the fact that this movie is 25 years old, but with the restoration, it's literally like they are frozen in time, and that's, you know, the beautiful thing about movies is every actor is frozen in time at that time of age that they've shot that movie. And again, I cannot say enough that it literally felt like this movie was just reshot and completely. It's just spectacular. I can't say enough. So everybody out there, do yourself a justice if you're a fan of the movie at all, and go see it while it's in the theaters. I think you have about a week and a half left, maybe another 2 weeks. It's worth every penny. Now let's get into these two masterpieces of the week. I think I'll start so as to give Amy a little bit of breathing room to kind of chat with me and get a little loose.
Sounds good.
I have chosen a movie that actually not only coincides with Valentine's Day, it coincides with February as being CHD Awareness Month. CHD Awareness Month, for those that may not know, is Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Month. My wife, myself, and Vee are all CHD survivors, so power, raise a fist to that, however you want to do that. Give us your love and appreciation. Send us money. We need a lot of money. So this month is just very special, not only to my wife and I, but to all three of us, really, because we are CHD survivors, and a very large group of friends of ours are also. So anyway, let's jump into my film. This is a movie that I saw in theaters. I actually went with my mother and my sister. I wanted to see it because of the subject matter and because I liked Carol O'Connor. This movie is from 2000. This is a movie directed by Bonnie Hunt, written by Bonnie Hunt and Don Lake. This is Return to Me, starring David Duchovny and Minnie Driver, and Carol O'Connor, and David Alan Grier, and Bonnie Hunt in a cameo appearance as well. James Belushi, the list goes on. It's got a stacked cast from the early 2000s and also the earlier years of cinema and TV sitcoms, which was one of the other reasons why this movie I felt was so hilarious when I first saw it. But watching it again with Amy, we hadn't watched it in a while together, but it's really hilarious. It's a lot funnier than I actually remember it being.
And I'm definitely a Minnie Driver stan. I love everything she does.
Minnie Driver stan?
Yeah.
You gotta explain what that means to John, I think. He's too old for it.
What the hell? That's actually a real thing?
Yeah, it's a term. I actually don't really know what it means, but I know that's how you properly use it.
So I think that it's hilarious, this moment right here, that the oldest person on this show is explaining what a stan is to the younger people. This is a crowning achievement for me, keeping up with pop culture. I'm very proud of this moment. I'm going to bask in it. A stan is a crazed or obsessed fan of someone.
Oh, kind of like the Eminem song.
Kind of.
Although the Eminem song was about, his name was Stan.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
Wow,
exactly.
all right. I have never heard that term, and I was in the entertainment industry for 20 plus years. How the hell did I never hear that?
Because you need to be on TikTok.
Okay.
So, Amy, then I'm going to test you. If you are a Minnie Driver stan, do you know which James Bond movie she was in? Very briefly.
No, because I don't think I've watched any James Bond movies.
Totally fair. I'm going to request and suggest you watch this one, because not only is this one of the best Bond movies ever made, it's certainly one of my all-time favorites. She makes a hilarious cameo as a Russian mobster's girlfriend, and she sings on stage horribly, which is also hilarious because we both know that she has a great voice and is a great singer. She is in the Pierce Brosnan-led GoldenEye.
Nice.
No! Oh yeah, I'll definitely have to watch it.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to definitely watch that. I wonder if that's on streaming right now.
She's hilarious, though. I don't doubt that she made an excellent cameo. And I loved her in Phantom of the Opera. I know you guys don't really like it, but her part as the diva is hilarious.
That is true. My favorite of hers, I think, has to be as the voice of Jane in the animated movie Tarzan.
Oh, yeah. I love her. Yeah, you get to hear her real voice in that movie.
Yeah.
And she's in a movie with Paul Giamatti from years ago called Barney's Version, and she plays his wife, and she was hilarious in that movie too. Every time she's in a movie, I try to at least give it a shot because, I mean, it's Minnie Driver. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
So getting back into Return to Me is about two different people. David Duchovny plays a gentleman named Bob Ruland. He is an architect and building a new building in downtown Chicago. He is on his way to a charity event for his wife, who has been taking care of a gorilla named Sydney at the Lincoln Park Zoo in Chicago. And this charity event is to raise money for a new habitat for this gorilla and for his wife's dream of having gorilla habitats in the Lincoln Park Zoo. His wife's name is Elizabeth, played by Jolie Richardson. For those that may not know who Jolie Richardson is, I recognize her most from The Patriot with Mel Gibson. She's also in Nip Tuck, the Ryan Murphy show, which was a twisted-ass show that I did not continue on past, I think, the White Supremacy season. I think it was like season 5 or 6 or something like that. Brittany Snow showed up as a white supremacist. It just got really intense and really insane for me, so I did not continue watching it. But great show, I hear. And then Jolie Richardson, she was in Event Horizon, which is one of my most favorite fucking films, sci-fi horror. Love that movie. And I think, V, you also are a fan, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, that movie is super awesome and fucked up.
Hell yes, it is. And then she's in a couple other movies. Oh, she plays the a live-action Purdy owner in the live-action 101 Dalmatians with Jeff Daniels and Glenn Close. So she definitely has the resume. Unfortunately, her character does not last very long in this movie, and Bob loses his wife. And in between all of this, we also meet Grace, who is in the hospital awaiting a heart transplant. And fast forward about a year later, Bob is still grieving the loss of his wife. He's working on this gorilla habitat at the Lincoln Park Zoo. He's got a buddy of his played wonderfully by David Alan Grier. If anybody knows who David Alan Grier is, at this point you definitely should. He started off with In Living Color. He is in Jumanji, which he and Bonnie Hunt are both in.
Oh my god, that's right. I forgot.
Plays the older cop, the adult cop at this point now because of the time jump in Jumanji. I always love when his car gets taken by the big vine. He just starts screaming like, "Go on, take it!" I just think that part is so hysterical.
God, I forgot. He is so funny in that movie.
He really is. He's great in everything. He's been in a couple of sitcoms over the last maybe 10 years as well. So he's still working, still doing his thing, which is great. Carol O'Connor, as everybody knows, maybe not. He was Archie Bunker in All in the Family from back in the day with young Rob Reiner, which I think is a hilarious show. Not sure how it holds up these days, but I remember it being funny.
And I love that in this movie, because I never saw All in the Family, I just see him as a sweet older grandpa.
Oh, right. I know. He's just wonderful as Marty. He plays Grace's grandfather, and Grace is played by Minnie Driver. So going back a little bit to the plot, it is, like I said, a year later, Bob is still working on this habitat for this gorilla to keep his wife's memory alive and to keep her dream really, moving forward. Grace is now healthy. She is a waitress in Marty, her grandfather's restaurant, and she is thinking it might be a good time for her to start dating, but she's very self-conscious about the scar down her chest, which all three of us, I think, at one point or another in our lives definitely can relate to. I did not really own my scar until I think it was my first year at camp, where all three of us happened to meet, which is pretty awesome that we're all three still in touch, and one of us is married to each other. Well, two of us are married to each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I married you.
He's all yours.
That's what his family said to me, too, once we were there.
Yeah, they packed all my stuff and threw it out the door and said, "He's all yours." And for those of you that have heard V and I talk about the camp every now and then, that is Camp Del Corazon over on Catalina Island. So Grace is thinking might be time to date. Bob is also kind of thinking he really doesn't want to date, but his buddy Charlie, who is played by David Alan Grier, is really pushing him to come out and meet, all these single ladies with him because he's a bit of a man about town, whatnot. So one night, Bob goes to meet him at this restaurant called O'Reilly's. It just so happens to be Marty's restaurant, where Grace is a waitress. And this might be one of the funniest first date, most awkward sequences in romantic comedies I've seen in I don't know how long. I mean, I forgot how funny this sequence was. I was just red-faced, tears down my face watching this sequence of this movie. And Amy, you had a couple of things to say about it too, right? We just kept looking at each other like, what the hell is wrong with this woman?
There's moments in movies and shows where like I almost can't watch them because I get so embarrassed for what's happening. I have to like walk away almost, but I think this like was on the line of that, you know. Like I was starting to get embarrassed, but it was more funny than embarrassing. But also I have to mention the theme of this restaurant because you didn't say that it was an Italian Irish restaurant.
That's right. I completely neglected to mention that Marty is Italian Irish, and the accent that he portrays in this movie is so awesome.
And I totally agree with you, and I think a lot of our audience can as well. The secondhand embarrassment for movie characters is a real thing.
Yeah. I absolutely hate. There's actually shows where I will like turn it off because I can't stand it anymore. And like, what's the worst one? The Office. I can't stand Steve Carell.
Yes.
But you like The Office. You walk out of the room when I watch Curb Your Enthusiasm. That's when you really can't stand.
Not happening.
Well, you worked on that show, right?
I did, yes. I did some of season 9, which was an absolute dream come true. And I met Larry David several times, which was also a dream come true. And one of those instances was talking about Dumb and Dumber, which was a highlight of my comedic moment of my life.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty spectacular. So after this awkward moment, Bob gets a phone call from a work friend, and I love this moment. He goes, hey, can you just call me back in like a few minutes and just disregard everything I say? So he gets this call back, and then he takes off. Because, you know, he gets his phone call, he's playing that he's got to go to work late at night, and Charlie's just like, no, come on, man, you don't have to go anywhere. And he goes, dude, I got a call, I got to leave, you know, I got to take off. And Grace is kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, is everything okay? And he goes, yeah, I just got called to work. She goes, is your girlfriend staying? He goes, oh, God, that's not my girlfriend. That's not even a friend. That's not even an acquaintance. I don't even know who that is. Like, he's just trying to, like, come off as, like, don't even put me in the same room as that person ever again, because he has already developed a bit of an attraction to Grace because she spitfires back at this woman who's being very rude to her. And I just love that whole maybe 8 minutes of the movie. I just think it's so well written, it's so well acted, and it's just cut together very well. It's just the timing, the pacing, everything in that scene works because, like Amy said, it's uncomfortable but funny, and you can't look away. It's a train wreck. It's so spectacularly done. And the character that we're talking about is Marcia, and she is played fantastically by Holly Whartle. She was in Beethoven and Junior and several movies over the last 10, 15 years. Just a face that you would recognize if you saw her.
Absolutely, and this is one of my all-time favorite horrible first date scenes that I've ever seen in a movie. And referencing back to one of our Christmas episodes, it's actually a great meet-cute for David Duchovny and Minnie Driver's characters.
Ah, yes, very much so. Very meet-cute style.
So meet-cute.
We're all three fans of the holiday here, and we turned V into a holiday fan.
Yeah.
That is true.
So again, we don't do spoilers here at Movies You Missed podcast. That's basically the gist of it. At one point or another, Bob asks Grace out, and then they end up going out, and we just follow them along for about a year, and things are good and things are bad. And another reason this movie works so well is because of the supporting cast. Bonnie Hunt is Grace's best friend. Marty, played by Carol O'Connor. We have Angelo, played fan-fucking-tastically by Robert Loggia. And if those don't know who Robert Loggia is, he is the general in Independence Day. That's all you need to know. He tells them how to bring those sons of bitches down towards the end of Independence Day. I can't do a very good Robert Loggia, but I just love Robert Loggia because Independence Day is how I discovered Robert Loggia. So Robert Loggia, one more time. And he is also the cook in O'Reilly's. And there's two other guys that are in this movie supporting cast-wise with Carol O'Connor and Robert Loggia, Eddie Jones and William Bowler. These four characters are great. They are the old grandpas. They're the old best friends. They sit at the back of the restaurant at the end of every night, smoke cigars, play cards, drink beer, and listen to old crooners. And they have discussions about who's the better crooner, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Perry Como. I mean, they just list off all these names. And the cool thing about watching this movie now, 23 years after it was released, is I have records from all of them now. And I love that. And a lot of the music that is in this movie, which is one of the best soundtracks of like 2000. I mean, you got to give Bonnie Hunt credit that this has excellent music. I have this music at home, and Amy and I can listen to it when Amy's baking or we're cooking together, and I just love that about this movie. It brings out so much warmth and coziness, which is one thing that Amy really likes to be, is very cozy. And this movie makes me feel cozy, so I can only imagine how it makes Amy feel.
So cozy.
I totally agree with you about the soundtrack. Old standards were perfect to go along with this very sweet, innocent love story. So the older classic music, I think, is a good companion to that. And I wholeheartedly agree about the supporting cast leveling up this movie. Bonnie Hunt and Jim Belushi together are hysterical. And ever since this movie came out, I always wanted a sitcom with the two of them together.
That would be great. That would be really good. And that's pretty much Return to Me. So beyond the fantastic supporting cast and wonderful soundtrack and how sweet and cozy it is, Amy, I know we have watched this movie together in the past, but it's been a while. And I'm curious if you actually enjoy it more now, or if you like it just the same as you did back when you first saw it and back when we started watching it together. Because I got to tell you, I actually enjoyed it a lot more this time around.
I actually think I agree with you. Back in the day when I watched it a couple of times a long time ago, one of them with you. But at first when I watched it, I am not a huge fan of like sad movies. I just don't like sad scenes. And I think that correlating with the subject matter being so personal, I liked the movie, but I don't think I was a huge fan of it. But this time around watching it, I didn't feel like it was as sad as I thought it was. Just because there's so many good, heartwarming, happy scenes that takes over the sad parts. So I really enjoyed it this time around, and I think I paid more attention to a lot of the happier parts that made up for the sad scenes.
That makes sense. I get you. This was a movie that brought me to tears every now and then, and I know that you looked at me several times trying to see if I was crying a moment or two, and I was hiding the fact that I had a tear falling down my left eye because you couldn't see that left eye.
I always watch to see if John cries, because he cries in like every movie.
I don't cry in every movie.
Yes, you do.
I cry in most movies. I cried in Everything Everywhere All at Once last night.
Yeah, you're a big crier, and I just don't cry in movies.
Yeah, I actually really like crying in movies. I've always been really self-conscious about crying in front of others, and I always felt like movies, because people can't see me, it's dark in the room or in the theater, I had permission to cry, and especially during a movie that most people are crying in, and so I've always really liked that outlet.
I think that's what it is for me, too. And I connect with the movies pretty deeply in a weird way.
Not weird at all.
I like when people cry in movies so I can laugh at them. It makes me happy.
Oh my God.
Brutal.
Gotta close the door. Keep her out.
Yeah. Well, good, babe. I'm glad that you are still a fan of the movie 23 years later and after watching it with me a few times. Because sometimes I may like a movie so much that it drives Amy crazy, and I'm glad that didn't happen this time around. But let's get into Bonnie Hunt a little bit, shall we? Quite the career this woman has had. I've met Bonnie Hunt. She actually had a talk show way back in the day. My mother and I went, and Bonnie just came through the stage and met everybody. So I met Bonnie Hunt. Yay! Getting the chance to meet Bonnie Hunt was kind of cool because I recognized her again from Jumanji. Definitely Beethoven. She is the voice of Rosie in A Bug's Life, if anybody's seen A Bug's Life. That movie, I think, is very entertaining. The animation, of course, is dated, but it's still an entertaining flick. She is a voice actor in Monsters, Inc. She plays Flint. She is the opening training monster for the simulation of scaring kids, like coming through the closet door and stuff like that. She's in Cheaper by the Dozen with Steve Martin. She is also the car Sally in the Cars trilogy. She is in Toy Story 3 as a voice actor as well, and in Zootopia as Bonnie Hops, which is the young go-getter bunny rabbit's mother's name. And Don Lake also plays the father of the bunny in Zootopia, who wrote this movie with Bonnie Hunt. Pretty cool career for Bonnie Hunt. I've always enjoyed watching Bonnie Hunt work. She always cracks me up. She was in Dave, I believe, right, V? Was she the one early on in our series of episodes here? We're walking type?
Yes, she has a very small cameo in Dave that I love.
Awesome. Another actress in this movie, I'm going to butcher her last name, But those of you would recognize this woman. Her name is Marianne Mueller-Leal. Pardon my tongue-tiedness. She is a character actor that has been in just about everything. She cracks me up. She is in Smokin' Aces, which was going to be an early pick of mine, but V actually cut that one out. She plays a prisoner in the movie Sex Drive. She is in this film, Return to Me. She is in The Terminator. She is in. It really just endless resume for this woman.
What part was she in The Terminator?
She played the incorrect Sarah in The Terminator.
Oh, yeah. I know who you're talking about. The waitress at the restaurant in Return to Me. Yeah, she's in everything.
Yes.
Wholeheartedly
Everything.
agree. Yes.
Yeah.
People
And
will
always,
recognize her.
definitely, and always fun to watch, always puts a smile on your face because she usually plays that cozy type grandmother, the lovable type. Always entertaining. Definitely cracks me up. And Smokin' Aces especially. If anybody's seen Smokin' Aces, she plays the grandmother of that drugged out kid.
She's also the teacher in Liar Liar. She's Jim Carrey's son's teacher.
That's right. Yes, she is.
My teacher says beauty's on the inside.
that's just something. Yeah, anyway. James Belushi, also known as Jim Belushi, came onto the scene back in the day. K9, Red Heat with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was in Trading Places. He had a show called According to Jim, which I went to a taping of at one point, and I had a conversation with him because I asked him, he was like, anybody got any questions in the audience? And I raised my hand. He called me out, and I said, hey, I'd really like to work for the company. How do I do that? He goes, I don't know. But if you leave your resume with somebody, maybe somebody will call you. I was in high school, and I didn't have a resume at the time. But definitely an entertaining show and an entertaining actor to watch. Don Lake, the writer of this movie, is also in this movie. He has a small cameo. Angelo, he tells Grace that he told this friend of his that she had some work done. And the only reason he's telling her this is because he also had some work done and he had hair transplants. And it's definitely one hilarious blind date moment scene in this movie as well. So again, beyond, like we've said in a lot of romantic comedies that we've discussed already, this movie has a lot of authenticity. I really like the fact that they cast David Duchovny. George Clooney was originally in talks to play Bob, and I'm really glad it didn't go to George Clooney because women would, I don't know, there's something about David Duchovny. He's kind of like an everyman. And I just feel the authenticity of casting David Duchovny and Minnie Driver instead of, I just really thought the authenticity really resonated, especially in the scene when he asks Grace out, when he's helping her in the garden outside. The back and forth stammering between both of them about how they first met and how they maybe weren't looking at each other, but they saw each other, what they were wearing the night before, and, they don't look so great tonight, and this, that, and the other. Super cute. You're just like, aw, Bob, you're getting back out there, man. Good for you. I always really enjoyed that. And David Duchovny, for those that know, V is a major Duchovny fan. Californication, Hank Moody, Agent Mulder from The X-Files, of which I've only ever seen one episode in my entire life. Another favorite of V and mine's, though, Evolution. He is in Evolution. He is the lead in Evolution. Let's also never forget that he is J.P. Pruitt, the world's most famous hand model in Zoolander, with his hyperbaric chamber keeping his beautiful hand nice and contained. I always loved him in Zoolander because it was such a great little comedic role for him, and I can only imagine how much fun he had.
Yes, David Duchovny was my first ever celebrity crush. I loved him in The X-Files and have watched just about everything he's been in since then. I've moved on from my intense crush of him, but he still holds a special place in my heart, which is probably one of the reasons why I still love this movie as much as I do.
Definitely. So that is the cast. That's the story and breakdown of Return to Me from 2000, directed by Bonnie Hunt. Here's a little bit of trivia that I was able to muster up. There's not a whole lot. I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't a lot of special features on the DVD, but that's okay. You don't always need it. And those that I've also listened know that there are times with movies that I don't even like to watch the special features. I like to just live in the moment of the movie and live in that world. And in complete seriousness, I kind of like living in this world without knowing how the production went down. But there's a couple of interesting little bits about it that I will discuss. Most interestingly enough for me, Bonnie Hunt's brother is a physician at the Hospital of Chicago, and he arranged the hospital to be used for the production of this movie. And there's not a whole lot of hospital sequences, but for those that know, production and locations and this, that, and the other, Location scouting is a pain in the ass, and shooting in locations that don't have electricity is also a pain in the ass. So very cool of Bonnie Hunt's brother to hook up the hospital and allow them to feed off of their energy to shoot some of the hospital scenes for this movie.
That's awesome, and I like how that makes a movie more authentic when you can actually shoot in the location.
Exactly, and that is another reason this movie I think also works, is because it is shot in Chicago and every location is practical. Nothing is shot on a soundstage.
Really? Is that it's a real zoo called that?
Oh, yeah, the Lincoln Park Zoo is the name of the zoo in Chicago, yes. And speaking of the zoo, the gorilla in the movie that plays Sydney, the gorilla's name is actually Quan, 33 years old as of spring of 2002, and currently still lives at the Lincoln Park Zoo and has fathered 6 offspring. Congratulations, Quan! Big Daddy. O'Reilly's, the restaurant that we spend majority of the movie in, is actually a Chicago staple called Twin Anchors. So that is an actual restaurant. That is not a soundstage. That is not built with 4 walls. It is all real. So imagine being on set of this movie. I feel like this was a 35 millimeter shoot. So the camera's inside a space like this. Good golly, it must have been cramped and hot as hell with all those lights beating on everybody.
Yeah, that's a really good point, especially in Chicago in the summer, which I love the setting for this movie. I love when a city gets incorporated into the plot and a movie itself and feels like a supporting character. And I think they did that wonderfully with Chicago in this movie.
They definitely did, and we mentioned that with Top Gun Maverick not too long ago about how you can feel the weather. Watching this movie, you can, for some reason, you just kind of know how it feels outside, just by the way that the cinematography is done in this movie. It's so nice. It's so warm and cozy.
I actually really like when they shoot in practical spots because if you're a fan of the movie, I know a lot of times you can actually go to those places and be like, it was shot here and I'm here, and that's always so cool.
Yeah, if we ever go to Chicago, we're going to Twin Anchors so we can stand in the restaurant that they shot this movie in, most definitely. The part of Joe who ultimately ended up going to Jim Belushi was originally offered to Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau, in his ego, said he didn't want to play a supporting character, so he turned the role down.
Wow, that was pretty early in his career to be saying that.
That's what I'm saying. I get it. Swingers was a big hit, but Swingers was 4 years before this movie. So, if you're offered a movie like this, especially with the cast, I mean, Jim Belushi had scenes with everybody. It's not like, he's going to be put in a corner and only, playing the father figure and only going to be shown in the house. He's everywhere in the movie. And that's another reason that I like this movie is like everybody is involved. The kids are always around. The grandparents are always around. The family is always together, and I always really liked that about this movie. And another interesting thing that I did not actually notice until watching it this time around, everybody in this movie, in every scene, is holding something, some kind of prop of some kind, either a glass of beer, a fork, a cell phone, a pager, a piece of paper, what have you. Everybody in this movie is holding a prop at one point or another in the scenes that we're watching, which was very, very authentic also, because even nowadays, some people are holding their phones, their keys, they might have a stress ball, they may have a knife or a lighter that they're flicking. People are fidgety. There you go. Yeah. Now I have my little stress balls. So, I really like that authenticity too that Bonnie Hunt threw in there. Have everybody at one point holding something or touching something. That was very cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a classic example of how you can always tell a set is an actual set and not a real street when there isn't enough stuff. There's no wires, there's not enough signs, there's not enough garbage, there's not enough trash cans, etc. When you have a very bald street, it's like the Warner Brothers backlot.
Exactly, yeah. Very, very true. And at the same time, I think that also might fall easier to recognize for people like us that have spent majority of our lives, on fake facades and fake city streets and stuff like that. Like when you watch Bruce Almighty, it's like, oh yeah, that's definitely Warner Brothers or that's definitely Universal. Yeah. It's not, Chicago. And you can tell because, again, you've walked by those for so many different times. I've never been to Chicago, so I really don't know what it looks like. Granted, you've seen it in Dark Knight and now this movie and so many other movies as a character of the movie that you're watching, but it's a city that I really would like to visit at some point in the future and have a deep dish pizza.
Amy, have you ever been on a backlot or set, or have you always been on real locations?
I have been on a set. When I was on The Neighborhood, that complete show was shot on a soundstage. I think 2 separate sound stages with a few different sets. NCIS was all practical mostly, except for like in the office scenes. I'm trying to think what else. No, I think that most of them are on sound stages that I've worked on.
Nice. Okay.
Yes. A couple other things before we get into the budget and all that stuff and move on to Amy's pick. There's a scene where Bob takes Grace up to a skyscraper and shows her the landscape of Chicago. And that is actually a real spot on Wacker Drive in downtown Chicago. So that was pretty cool that wasn't some kind of fabrication. I thought that was nice that was real. The dog in this movie, the handsome bulldog, Mel, is played by a dog named Petey. You haven't really seen that dog too much else, but I really I really felt like I should mention that because he is definitely a singular character in this movie for quite some time. And I really liked the use of the dog to bring out a little bit more of the emotion throughout the tenure of the movie.
I wonder if he was named after Petey from Little Rascals, which is also the same kind of dog.
Oh, interesting.
Great call out. I bet you're right.
So that, everybody, is my pick for Valentine's Day. Return to Me. Not only is it Valentine's Day, again, it is CHD Awareness Month. All 3 of us here that you are listening to now are CHD survivors. Return to Me was released on April 7th of 2000. It came out against the David Arquette Scott Conn film Ready to Rumble, starring Oliver Platt, which I think is a fantastically terrible movie. Oliver Platt, in all seriousness, makes that movie for me. It also was a 5-year anniversary release date of a Goofy movie on April 7th of 2000 because Goofy movie came out on April 7th of 1995. I had to throw that in there because Goofy movie was some of the music that Amy and I walked down the aisle to and came out to our reception at our wedding too, and Goofy movie is a masterpiece. Other April 2000 movies: Where the Heart Is with Natalie Portman and Ashley Judd, Frequency with Dennis Quaid and Jim Caviezel, Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas. Never saw that one because why would you need to watch a sequel after the already masterpiece with John Goodman and Rick Moranis, The Flintstones, and U-571, the Matthew McConaughey, John Bon Jovi submarine war movie. Budget for Return to Me was $24 million. $36 million worldwide was the box office pull. $7.8 million domestically throughout its tenure in the theaters. Not a great U.S. receiving box office, but still worldwide $36 million. It made $12 million more than its budget over the worldwide box office. You can't really go wrong there.
That probably means it lost money because, remember, you usually have to at least double the budget to start making your money back.
Right, yeah. And it's a shame that this one didn't do as well as it should have. But 2000 was quite the year for movies. And V, we do play the guessing game, and Amy already knows what the number 1 movie of 2000 was. I'm curious, would you like to play the game, or you want me to just tell you?
No, I love playing this game. Let's do it.
All right, let's play the game. Highest grossing film of 2000. Your hint is we watched it while you were here.
Shit.
It's one of the earlier ones that we watched. Might have been the first one that we watched. It's based on a book. There's a green guy in it.
Okay, well, we watched Black Adam, Great Gatsby, Apocalypto.
We didn't watch Great Gatsby.
I mean, The Greatest Showman. Fuck. See,
yes.
this is how my brain's working right now. The Greatest Showman.
Yahoo Flores, Yahoo Chorus.
Yes, Amy with the support. Thank you so much. It is The Grinch with Jim Carrey.
Yes, it is. $253 million for the year of 2000. That's madness.
I didn't know it had done that well. I actually thought that was always considered a flop.
So did I. That's why this was kind of shocking, because the second highest grossing film I thought would have been the highest grossing film, and it stars one of our most beloveds.
That would be Tom Cruise?
It is. It's a Tom Cruise film, but it's one of the worst Tom Cruise films, and not The Mummy, because The Mummy came out very recently.
Yeah, I was going to say that has to be Mission Impossible 2, right?
Mission Impossible 2 with $215 million.
Just set that movie on fire already.
Yeah, I know, right? Number 3 was the Best Picture winner that year with Russell Crowe, directed by Ridley Scott, Gladiator. which I guess I still have to rewatch because I remember not liking Gladiator, and I still get shit for it from the masses.
It's one of those very earnest, over-dramatic action movies of the late 90s that we talk about a lot that is
Right.
like just doesn't age well because it's just trying so hard to pull at your heartstrings, and it's just so classic of that time period.
Okay, well then maybe I will just keep my opinion and not
You're
waste those
allowed
2.5 hours.
not like it. I mean,
Exactly.
Joaquin Phoenix is great in it, and so is Connie Nielsen. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean you have to revisit it.
There you go. Good. Moving on then. Number 4 was the George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, intense Wolfgang Peterson directed, based on a true story, The Perfect Storm. I saw that movie once. That was a pretty wild-ass flick.
I haven't actually seen it. I don't really enjoy these big disaster savior movies that were in the early 2000s, or even that Mark Wahlberg kept making, like the recent oil rig one he made.
Oh, Deepwater Horizon. I
Yeah.
like that one. I thought that was pretty good. But I can understand what you're saying. Moving on, though. Number 5, Ben Stiller, Robert De Niro, Meet the Parents. Number 6, the first X-Men movie. Hell yeah. Number 7, Scary Movie. Number 8, V, your choice for the first horror month that we have done here, What Lies Beneath. Number 9, the Disney animated film Dinosaur. Number 10, the Oscar-winning film Aaron Brockovich. Number 11, Nutty Professor 2, The Clumps, starring Eddie Murphy and 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 Janet Jackson. Number 12 was Charlie's Angels. 13, Martin Lawrence in Big Mama's House. Number 15, Remember the Titans. Number 23, Scream 3. Number 29, U571. Number 43, a film, actually the one of two that V and I discussed not too long ago, Shanghai Noon with Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan. Number 47 was Final Destination. And number 57 of 2000, scratching the top 100, Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
Which is a favorite of just about anybody that's ever seen it.
Yes. I love that movie.
How can you not?
Amy, you can stay now that you've said that.
So that is my pick for Valentine's Day here at Movies You Miss Podcast. Return to Me from 2000, starring David Duchovny and Minnie Driver, Bonnie Hunt and Carol O'Connor, directed by Bonnie Hunt. Give it a shot. It really is a sweet movie. I think it holds up. It actually has gotten better with age, in my personal opinion. And if you do want to watch Return to Me, it is currently streaming on Hulu with a premium subscription, or you can rent it on Apple TV or Amazon Prime for $3.99.
Awesome. Thanks so much for picking it. I love revisiting that movie.
Me too. And I'm glad that I got to watch it with my wife.
Yeah.
So, Amy, I'm going to pass the torch to you since you are our guest host this week. I'm excited to discuss this movie, episode 44 for Valentine's Day. Why don't you tell everybody what you picked?
My pick for this week was a romantic comedy called Down with Love. It's one of my favorite comfort movies of all time. You know, every time I'm sick, it's on a list. I have you pull out like these 5 same DVDs, and it's one of them.
Always. Every time you're sick.
So starring in this movie was Renee Zellweger, Ewan McGregor, David Hyde Pierce, and Sarah Paulson. The movie is about this woman named Barbara Novak, played by Renee Zellweger, who is a writer from a small town in Maine. And she goes to New York to get her book published by Banner House Publishing and meet her editor, played by Sarah Paulson. Her name's Vicky Hiller. Barbara Novak's book is called Down with Love, and it's a how-to book for women to become independent and start enjoying sex a la carte with no strings attached like a man. To promote her book, Vicky, her editor, suggests Barbara gets an article published by Notorious Ladies Man and writer for the popular men's mag No, Catcher Block, played by Ewan McGregor. Catcher Block's spineless boss, Peter McMahon, played by David Hyde Pierce, convinces Block to do the interview with Barbara Novak about her man-hating book, and as a favor because he's hopelessly in love with her editor, Vicky. Catcher Block reschedules this interview over and over when he gets sidetracked by a bunch of beautiful women So eventually, Barbara and Vicky give up on Block, and instead, they take their book to the Ed Sullivan Show, where Judy Garland performs Down with Love, and it becomes an immediate international success, making Catcher Block feel like an angry loser, because he could have profited from this success as well. Block decides to write a hard-hitting expose, which he's famous for, about Barbara and bring her down. His plan is to disguise himself as someone else and make her fall in love with him, therefore making her an up with love girl instead of a down with love girl. Chaos ensues. There's fun twists and turns. This movie is really colorful and poppy and musical, and you'll just have a really good time watching it. Like I said, I absolutely love this movie. So before I get into like the fun facts and behind the scenes, what did you think of this movie?
Well, I love it, oddly enough, because number one, you showed it to me very early on in our relationship, and you showed it to me because you knew I was a Ewan McGregor fan. I'm not big on Renee Zellweger. I like some of her performances, but I never was one to watch a movie because Renee Zellweger was in it, but I was a big fan of Chicago. I love Cold Mountain, and I think Renee Zellweger is very talented, so I was definitely down to give it a shot. And having David Hyde Pierce in this movie also is great, because I have had the pleasure of meeting David Hyde Pierce on the set of Frasier many, many, many years ago when I was a child. So I know how he is, which is great. And the movie itself, beyond it being very colorful and hilarious, and for the time period that it's set in being, somewhat revolutionary based on the content of the movie, it's a lot of fun to watch with you because you genuinely enjoy it. You laugh a lot, and you always facepalm yourself when some of the more uncomfortable scenes happen, especially with David Hyde Pierce, because he's trying so hard to be a manly man and impress Vicky. And that might be some of the best parts of the movie, even though the back and forth between Renee Zellweger and Ewan McGregor is also very snappy and very fresh and very vibrant as well. And I think another reason why I like this movie is because you are also a very vibrant person.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. Not to get too mushy on Valentine's Day.
That's what it's for.
A little bit, yes. But yeah, overall, big fan. I'm glad that we watch it every now and then, not only when you're sick, but it is a movie that every several months you might just be like, do you want to watch Down with Love? And I'm always down to watch Down with Love.
Well, yeah, I could watch this over and over and over again. And I was actually introduced to this movie by a friend of mine when I was in college, a friend of mine named Mandy. And we were really huge fans of the Doris Day and Rock Hudson movies from that era in the 60s. And this is really an homage to that same kind of 60s bedroom comedy, was the specific genre of rom-com. So I think it really does a great, great job of being a mirror to that type of comedy. It didn't make fun of it. It's definitely elaborated from the ones in the 60s, but it's really spot on, and they really tried to make the production exactly the way they filmed it in the 60s.
Now, that was one thing we learned when watching the making of, which I'll let you discuss, but you also got me into Doris Day movies. I had never seen Pillow Talk or Pajama Party or Glass Bottom Boat or any Doris Day movie until you moved in with me. And that was another reason why I was so fascinated with this movie, because when you pitched it to me, which you bought it at Amoeba one day when we were there doing our record shopping, and you said, we're going to watch this movie. I think you'll like it. It's kind of like Pillow Talk and Pajama Party and some of those old Doris Day movies. Like, all right, then I'm in. And I was interested to see if there was any musical numbers, because Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger both have done musicals and both have great voices. I will say that Renee Zellweger really can sing. I thought she was great as Roxy Hart in Chicago. And Ewan McGregor with Moulin Rouge. I mean, how can you forget that? And I mean, come on, Obi-Wan. I think when we were discussing Big Fish, I had to find out, search my brain for more characters of his, because Obi-Wan isn't one that I normally think of him as. But I think it was the blooper reel. He kept looking at the camera and being like, who am I? And someone off camera would be like, Obi-Wan. He's like, oh, good. So I thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, it does pay great homage. And I'm excited to hear more about it. Not only did we watch the behind the scenes, but you did some research of your own. So fill us in, babe.
Yeah, and you did mention that Ewan McGregor had just come off of Moulin Rouge, actually, and Renee Zellweger had just come off of Chicago, so it was really cool that they had just taken their talents and turned him towards this movie, and it actually made Sarah Paulson really nervous to take this part because she hadn't done anything like it, and this was supposed to be her breakout film, and she was just really nervous. And the whole movie doesn't actually have a lot of musical numbers, but it's very choreographed, if you'll notice, like the way they all step in unison. And I love that they do that. It just gives it a musical quality without there actually being musical numbers, which is really cool. This movie was shot on Fox Studios on 4 different sound stages with 55 different sets, all hand-built and very detailed to look like actual spaces in the 60s. So all of the furniture, all of the paint, everything was was a little bit elaborated from the original architecture of buildings in the 60s, but it was so vibrant, so poppy, so colorful. I absolutely love that about this. It almost is like just watching a candy store the whole entire time.
I agree completely, especially the dresses that some of them wear. It looks like fruit snacks. What are the fruit by the foot? I could not get that out of my mouth.
Yes, very like just rainbow colored all the way through. I love that. So some fun facts about this movie is they actually asked George Clooney to play the part of Catcher Block originally, which is funny because it connects to your trivia from your movie.
That's crazy. I had no idea. That's hilarious.
They wanted to go with that Rock Hudson look, and George Clooney definitely portrayed that. But he actually turned it down, and so they went a little bit different direction, and they got Ewan McGregor, and he kind of has the more gangly Frank Sinatra look, but it also worked really, really well for that time period in the 60s, I thought.
Yeah, completely. Ewan McGregor, he's a handsome, debonair fella, and not that George Clooney isn't. I don't see George Clooney doing a movie like this, oddly enough. I see Ewan McGregor having so much more fun with it, and you can tell that there was nothing but fun on this set based off of the way this movie was put together.
And that's what they were talking about when we watched the behind the scenes for this movie. They were saying that it honestly just did not feel like work. They all just played and had a good time the entire time this film was being made. So that's awesome. And that's including the director. I loved meeting the director in these behind the scenes because he just seemed so playful. I love that. And it was directed by Peyton Reed. He's such a cool guy in the interviews, and he was perfect for this movie, I think.
Yeah, I thought he brought a nice flair to it. And
the movie you would most recognize the director is from the movie Bring It On. He also directed.
That's right, yes. I definitely saw Bring It On, I think twice in the theaters.
Really? I don't think I ever watched it in theaters, but I'm a huge fan of the movie. It's really fun.
Yeah, definitely a great movie.
He also directed Yes Man and the 2 Ant-Man movies, which I have not seen. No, I've seen Yes Man. That's with Zooey Deschanel, and I love anything Zooey Deschanel is in, so it was a pretty good movie, but I have not seen either of the Ant-Man movies. Some other fun facts about this movie, and this is just like foreshadowing for Renee Zellweger. On the part when they go on to the Ed Sullivan Show, they actually show a Judy Garland performance that she did on the Ed Sullivan Show. And they have Barbara Novak watching this performance. Well, not that long after this movie is made, Renee Zellweger goes on to play Judy Garland in a movie, which I thought was really, really cool. Another fun, silly fact from this movie is at some point, Vicky tells Peter McManus that she thought he was gay. And this was before both of them, Sarah Paulson and David Hyde Pierce, come out in the open. So I just thought that was fun and also foreshadowing. I just love knowing little fun facts like that. It's just fun.
Yeah, that was a pretty good moment.
Well, we're really glad to hear that you like those fun facts about movies because that's the essence of our show.
We, of course, have to mention the costumes in this movie because they are phenomenal. And I learned that every single costume was hand-fitted to each actor and actress. They were all made completely from original 60s clothing patterns, and they wanted them to be all handmade and new because of the colors of the movie. So they wanted that fabric to be vibrant. But they did find actual antique fabrics from across the world from that time period. Specifically, that part when Barbara and Nikki come down to their first meeting with Catcher Block, and they're wearing this matching black, white, and yellow outfits, and in unison they take off their coats. I love that scene, and it was also Sarah Paulson's favorite scene, so it's really cool.
Oh, very cool. Every time that scene comes up, you always grab my arm and go, "This is my favorite part." And it's so minuscule, but it's not, because it really like shows the power that they both feel that they have in the moment. I really like that moment of the movie.
And I love the details and touches that they give in this movie to put it in the time period. Specifically, towards the beginning of the movie, they're talking about their socks, and Peter McManus still has like the old-fashioned garters keeping his socks on, and in comes Catcher Block with these new Lycra spandex socks that stay up on their own. So it was a new technology for that time period. So it's really fun to see those little historical touches to bring it back to the authenticity of that time period.
I really like that too. And not only is there a hilarious double entendre and sexual innuendo going on in that sequence, the whole fact that Peter McManus grabs a ruler and he's like, "Hold on, let's measure and see how tall yours are compared to mine." And then he's like, "Oh, I'm at 10 inches. And he's like, "I'm at 12, almost at the knee. And I've got 2 of them." So, we find out at that moment, Catcher Block's secretary is listening. So of course she thinks they're comparing their manhood sizes to each other, and she's losing her mind about it. I thought that was fucking hilarious.
I have enough of an insecurity complex without worrying about my socks falling down. How can you be confident you won't show a shiny shin when you cross your legs?
It's a miracle of the space age. Sock manufacturers are using new wonder fibers like Lycra, Orlon, and Dacron to put super stay-up power into their over-the-calf sock.
What would you say is the average length for most men?
How would I know? You think I spend all my time in the locker room at the club looking around making a comparative study?
Well, let me see yours again, then. We could measure. I'll get a ruler.
Better make it a yardstick.
It's so funny. And it's actually, going back to that, they actually had the same type of scenes of innuendo in the original Doris Day and Rock Hudson movies. And this was pretty much based off of the storyline from Pillow Talk. I absolutely love that movie. They have that split screen effect that they build these innuendos off of without even saying anything. So I just love how they do that, and it's just a subtle way of bringing the innuendo from those original movies and reusing it in this new 60s bedroom comedy.
Absolutely. Pillow Talk is high up there for one of my favorite Doris Day movies, too. It might be biased because it's your favorite, but I really like Brock Hudson in that movie, and that movie makes me laugh. And we've watched that one, I think, more than any other Doris Day movie, but we've watched that and Glass Bottom Boat quite often, and I really am a big fan of those evenings at home.
Me too. I could watch those over and over and over again, like I said. But that's about all I have for my movie. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Always enjoy watching Down with Love with you, my love.
And I'm so glad to be here with you guys today and do this podcast with my husband and celebrate Valentine's Day. So that's awesome. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for coming in. You sounded fantastic.
Thanks.
And V, did you end up watching the movie?
I did. I've seen this movie once before, back when it came out and when Netflix sent out DVDs in the mail. That's how I saw it originally.
Aha.
It's good. It's definitely campy fun. I wholeheartedly would agree with you in regards to the setting and the costuming being gorgeous in this film. I think that really carries the film, is just how polished and artsy this film feels.
Yes, I love it. And can I say one more thing? Because I know we all dislike the movie La La Land. And I just want to say that if they did La La Land more like this, like more directly to the time period with just a little bit of elaboration and kept it a little more campy, I think I would have liked it.
I like that take.
She said that every time we watch Down with Love, ever since we watched La La Land for the first and only time.
Yeah, I really wanted to like it, and I didn't.
You're in good company.
Exactly. And I'm not the only one, and neither is V. There's many of us out there. Apparently, Hillary Duff also does not like La La Land. So shout out to Hillary Duff, La La Land hater, united. Amy, V, and I ask this question to each other every episode, and now we will direct it towards you. Would you watch Down with Love with your grandmother?
Probably not, no.
Oh, no? Too on the religious side?
Yeah, she's a little bit religious. It was a little bit too risque for her.
Gotcha.
Would you watch your movie with your grandma?
I would, and I can almost guarantee that we very likely have watched it. Maybe not just her and I, but the family and Grandma and Grandpa back in the day when it first came out. Since it's from 2000, so they were both around at the time. So yeah, I'm sure we did.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for guest starring and also saving me today. I deeply, deeply appreciate it, and we loved hearing your take on movies and introducing us to this movie, because I know you did introduce John to it.
Yeah, thank you for having me again, and I hope you feel better soon.
Oh, thank you. Well, I hope I feel better soon, too, especially because we have another episode upcoming next week, like we do every week, and next week we are going racing.
Yeah.
I am picking the documentary, this is our first documentary on this show. It is about a famous Brazilian F1 racer named Senna.
I have never heard of it, so I'm excited.
I am excited to introduce it to you. It is a documentary from 2010, and you can currently watch it on YouTube.
Oh, fantastic. That's where we will watch it then. Or I will watch it. And I am excited because I am not a car guy. I'm very vehicularly illiterate, if that's even a
That's
correct term.
That's
But
perfect.
I believe it is. So I'm going with a movie that I actually went and saw in theaters with my father-in-law. This is the Matt Damon, Christian Bale, James Mangold directed Ford versus Ferrari. And I love this movie. Like I said, saw it in theaters. I have the 4K copy, so I will be watching my 4K copy of Ford vs. Ferrari. But if you would like to follow along with us, you can view it on Hulu with a subscription. Definitely check it out. It is a fantastic movie and another history lesson, because I had no idea that these people existed.
I'm so glad you picked it. It is one of my all-time favorite racing movies, and I agree with you. It is a great story. So excited to talk about that movie with you next week.
Hell yeah! Well, thank you guys very much, and thank you, Amy, my wife, for joining us on this Valentine's Day episode. This is episode 44. Please do rate, review, subscribe. One thing that we did not mention was we had a very awesome surprise go down just the other day on our Instagram account. I like to tag the actors and the directors of the movies that we discuss on our Instagram and on Twitter, just to see if we get any interaction. We've had a few likes from a few people. We now have had a share from a A-list celebrity. John Leguizamo has stopped by our Instagram page before, but this time he has shared one of our posts to his Instagram stories. I lost my mind. I was so excited because those of you that have been listening since day one know that V and I are both major fans of John Leguizamo. So thank you, sir. If you do end up listening, very, very heartwarming and humbling to see you drop by and share our little page, and to even get some feedback from you was absolutely spectacular. Definitely a win in social media world and a win for this podcast, if I do say so myself.
Yes, we collectively lost our minds and are so grateful for the fact that John Leguizamo saw us and enjoys that we picked his movie Spun.
Hell yes. Good stuff. And as we always like to end here at Movies You Missed, film is a form of art, and in art, all opinions are valid, except if you think
Old movies aren't worth watching because everything made now is based off of what was made in the past.
Awesome.
Nice.
Look at
Wholeheartedly
that.
agree. Good take.
Nice. I love
Thanks.
it. Yes. All right. Well, thank you guys again, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.